Hello everyone. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the horror mystery films from 2012, titled Sinister. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The movie opens with some eerie footage from a camcorder, which shows a family of 4 hanging under a tree with ropes tied around their necks. Soon, an unknown entity uses a saw to remove a branch, which acts as a counterweight, brutally lifting and strangling the entire family. The scene then cuts to a few months later, where we meet a man named Ellison, who is currently moving into a new home with his wife, Tracy, and their 2 children. While they are bringing their stuff inside, Ellison notices his daughter Ashley, doodling on the walls, and asks for her help. But the girl refuses and states that she isn't happy about their move. She expresses how much she misses her old school, but Ellison informs her that they had to move here for his upcoming book. He assures her that once he finishes the book, they can leave. Later, Ellison receives a visit from the local sheriff, who is upset by the family's arrival at the house. It turns out that something terrible happened to the previous residents, and their young daughter remains missing to this day. The sheriff also expresses displeasure with Ellison's work as a true crime writer, particularly since many of his previous theories proved to be incorrect. He knows that Ellison is here to work on another crime story, and urges him to return to where he came from. However, Ellison refuses to budge, as his career is going downhill, and he's desperate for a best-selling book. After the sheriff leaves, Tracy inquires about why he came, to which Ellison lies that he was just a fan. She doesn't believe him, and asks if he's here to work on another story. Ellison promptly denies it, and then heads to the kitchen. But from the window there, he stares at a tree, and we realize that it is the same one from the opening scene, where the entire family was murdered. Later, while investigating the house, Ellison stumbles upon a box in the attic room. He is also startled to find a large scorpion inside, which he quickly kills. He then opens the box there, and finds a projector along with several reels of 8mm film. The reels seem to be ordinary family tapes, but they are from different time periods. That night, after the rest of his family goes to sleep, he heads to his office, and sorts through the case files for the family crime. He then sets up the projector, and begins watching the tapes he found in the attic. Ellison starts with a tape titled Family Hanging Out 11, which appears to be home videos of the Stevenson family who lived here before. The footage seems normal at first, with the family playing and hanging out outdoors, but the scene quickly turns dark when the family is shown hanging from the tree. Ellison is so disturbed by the sight, so he takes a sip of whiskey. Soon, he begins rewinding the footage, wondering who recorded all this material, and why. Next, Ellison begins to watch another tape titled Barbecue 79. This video shows another family fishing at a river, and having a great time together. But suddenly, the clip switches to the family tied up, and gagged inside a car, which is completely chained. Someone then setting the car on fire, killing everyone inside. Feeling horrified, Ellison considers quitting and calling the police to report his findings, right when he notices copies of his only best-selling book, Kentucky Blood, which was published 10 years ago. Ellison realizes how badly he needs to revive his career, so he hangs up the call and decides to continue his investigation. After this, Ellison prepares to watch another tape titled Pool Party 66, but soon hears strange noises around the house. He assumes it's his daughter sleepwalking and heads to her room, only to find her sound asleep. Meanwhile, the noises continue, so he follows it and reaches the hallway, where a strange box is present. Before Ellison can figure out what's happening, his son Trevor suddenly emerges from the box, half naked and screaming at the top of his lungs. Ellison quickly carries him outside while Tracy also arrives. Trevor soon calms down, and it turns out he used to have such nightmares before, but they had stopped a long time ago. The next day, the kids head off for their first day at school, and Tracy leaves for work. Once alone in the house, Ellison returns to his office and begins to watch Pool Party 66. The footage shows another family spending the day by the pool and having fun. But just like the previous instances, things once again turn grim, where the family is shown tied to lounge chairs beside the pool. Here, Ellison suddenly notices a ghostly figure staring at the camera. He thus pauses the video and gets closer to observe it, but then the tape catches fire out of nowhere. Now that the reel is partially destroyed, Ellison Googles how to repair 8mm film. Unfortunately, after turning the film into digital format, he can no longer see the entity's face. Just then, he's interrupted by loud noises in the living room. It turns out Tracy and Trevor have returned home and are arguing with each other. Tracy reveals that their son drew 4 people hanging from a tree on his classroom whiteboard with a permanent marker. She then argues with Ellison about his disturbing writings, which she believes are affecting their kids. Ellison defends himself by claiming that when bad things happen to good people, he feels compelled to make their stories heard, but Tracy becomes annoyed and walks away. Later that night, Ellison picks out another tape titled Sleepy Time 98, in which he sees a family gagged in their beds. The criminal finishes them off using a knife, showing no compassion even for the children. Ellison then notices a peculiar symbol on one of the walls, and prints it out to analyze it. He also adjusts the contrast of the recording, and discovers the address as St. Louis. Following this, Ellison Googled the St. Louis murders, and comes across news from 1998. He learns that a couple was murdered along with their youngest son, while their 13-year-old son had disappeared. At this moment, the power suddenly goes out, and strange noises are heard from the attic. Ellison can simply call it a night and go to sleep, but he chooses to be brave again. With the help of his camera's light, he heads to the attic, and notices a cardboard lid that seems to move on its own. When he cautiously removes it, a snake abruptly crawls out and slithers away. Inspecting the lid, he discovers a series of children's drawings depicting the different murders shown on the tapes. But the shocking thing is that next to each family, there's a diabolical figure referred to as Mr. Boogie. Ellison takes pictures of all the drawings, and tries to leave. But then, a part of the attic floor suddenly breaks, causing him to fall and badly injure his leg. After a while, paramedics arrive to treat his leg, and once they leave, a deputy questions Ellison about what happened. The latter claims he heard strange noises, but the deputy points out that the entire neighborhood lost power, and the noises were most likely caused by scared squirrels. During this, the deputy reveals that he's a big fan of Ellison's work, and asks if he could sign a copy of Kentucky Blood for him. The writer obliges, and takes him to his office to get the book. While there, the deputy offers to help Ellison with his investigation, in exchange for a small acknowledgement in his next book. Ellison immediately agrees, and asks him to look into the addresses of the crimes shown in the videos he found. After the deputy leaves, Ellison compares the drawings he found in the attic with the ghostly figure that appeared in the pool footage. He then reviews the rest of the cases, and is shocked to discover that Mr. Boogie is present in all the tapes, hidden in the background, and staring at the victims. The next day, the deputy contacts Ellison to provide information about a crime committed in California in 1979, where the Martinez family was burned alive in their car, and their 9-year-old son went missing. He also shares the exact address of the St. Louis murders, which involve the Miller family. Ellison is surprised as he realizes that the Stevenson family, who died in this house, had also previously lived in the Miller's house. And then suddenly, he doesn't notice it, but is horrified to notice several ghostly children's hands trying to drag him down the moment he fell from the attic. Later that night, he wakes up to strange noises, and goes out to investigate. Ellison soon enters his office, and is shocked to find the projector playing the tape of the Stevenson family's death. He quickly turns it off, and looks out into the backyard, where he briefly catches a glimpse of Mr. Boogie. Ellison is scared shitless, but he still ventures outside to ensure no one is there. And then suddenly, an aggressive dog appears out of nowhere and tries to attack him. As Ellison prepares to confront it, 5 ghostly children can be seen behind him, and the dog seems frightened and quickly retreats. The next day, the deputy returns, and hands Ellison some files he had requested. Ellison takes him to his office, and finally opens up about what he's been working on. They deduce that since the crimes have been happening since the 1960s, the killer must be a very old man by now. It turns out that all of the families were murdered in different cities, with the only common thread being the disappearance of a child following each massacre. The family members were also drugged prior to their deaths. Ellison then points out the demonic mark that appears in every tape. Seeing this, the deputy talks about Professor Jonas, who often assists the police with occult cases like this one. After the deputy leaves, Ellison watches another tape titled Lawn Work 86. The footage begins with a seemingly sweet family watching television. However, the scene quickly shifts to a lawn mower being run by someone. Oh my God! Ellison is greatly disturbed by the gruesome sight, so he contacts Professor Jonas for help. The professor reveals that the symbol Ellison shows him is used in worshipping a pagan deity named Bagul, who usually eats children. The deity would kill these children's families, before taking them to his own netherworld to consume their souls. This is likely the work of cult members rather than the actions of a single person. After the call, Ellison goes to sleep, but as the clock hits 3 a.m., he wakes up to hear the sound of a projector running. He heads to his office, but finds no one there. Grabbing a baseball bat, he begins inspecting the house. And then all of a sudden, the apparitions of the missing children are seen playing hide and seek behind him. Ellison keeps checking around the house, and we notice all the missing children are trying to scare him. Ellison also checks Ashley's room for a quick look before closing the door. However, we notice that her eyes are actually focused on Stephanie, who's the missing daughter of the Stevenson family. Meanwhile, Ellison grows tired of inspecting, so he eventually falls asleep on the sofa. The next day, he hears his wife scolding their daughter for painting on the walls outside her room. But the little girl explains that Stephanie didn't allow her to paint her room, as it used to belong to her brother. Hearing this, Mom is confused, so Ashley reveals that Stephanie is the Stevenson family's missing daughter, the one her dad is writing a book about. Tracy is utterly shocked by the information, as she can't believe her husband lied to her once again. She chastises Ellison for bringing his family to live in this murder house. She begs him to move back to their old house, saying that all she wants is a safe life. But despite everything, Ellison is determined to finish the book to revive his career, and promises they'll leave immediately if things get out of hand. Hearing this, a disappointed Tracy walks out of the room. The scene then cuts to nighttime, where we see Ellison fast asleep, and someone is pointing a torch at him. Soon, he wakes up, and feels disturbed by the sound of the projector running. He heads to his office, but finds the projector missing. Ellison follows the sound, and soon arrives in front of the attic, where the stairs leading up are open. To Ellison's shock, he notices the 5 missing children sitting up there, playing a tape on the projector. All the children signal him to remain silent. And then, Mr. Boogie suddenly appears and this causes him to fall down the stairs. The projector and the reels also fall from the attic. Having had enough, the writer takes the projector and reels to the yard and begins burning them. His wife has just woken up, so Ellison simply says that she was right, and they should get out of the house immediately. After burning everything, the couple rushes inside, grabs the children, and leaves the house. Trevor is worried about their belongings, but Ellison assures him that they'll send some movers in the morning. The next day, the family shifts all their belongings to their old house. Ellison believes they're finally safe, and when he receives a call from the deputy, he doesn't answer it. In the evening, he sees that he has received an email from Professor Jonas, who has sent scans of several ancient drawings related to Bagul. The professor reveals how each drawing he sent has been partially destroyed by early Christians, who believed that the demonic images were a gateway for Bagul from the afterlife to the mortal world. It turns out that these images have the power to possess anyone who views them, and children are especially vulnerable. Upon hearing this, Ellison asks if the demon would leave if he deletes the photos or burns them, but this only confuses the professor. The scared Ellison then hangs up the call. Next, Ellison heads upstairs to store some things, but he's shocked to find a box there. Inside, there's an envelope containing more tapes, labeled as extended cut endings. This freaks him out, but he still wants to understand what's going on. Ellison then begins setting up the projector when he once again gets a call from the deputy. This time, He finally answers, and the deputy informs him that he has made a huge mistake by moving into another house. It turns out that the deputy has traced the chain of events in this series of murders. According to his findings, each of these families used to live in the same house where the previous family was murdered. And they were only murdered after they moved out, meaning Ellison's family has now fallen into a trap, and might be the next victims. Hearing this, the writer is left speechless and just hangs up the call. He then begins watching the extended tapes, and discovers something so sinister that shakes him to his core. In each crime, the missing children appear at the end of the footage. As a result, Ellison realizes that they were the ones who recorded the videos, and killed their own families under the influence of Bagul. Unfortunately, before Ellison can process this, he suddenly feels dizzy. He then finds a note under his coffee cup that says, "Good night, Daddy," before finally passing out. We also notice Ashley, indicating that she has drugged him, just as the other children did under Bagul's influence. In the next scene, Ellison regains consciousness to find himself, his wife, and his son bound and gagged, with tapes over their mouths. Moments later, Ashley approaches him, holding an axe and the same 8mm camera. She begins recording him, and promises to make him famous again, before finally. She kills her dad with the axe. After massacring her entire family, Ashley plays the chilling footage of her murders. The video reveals the entire house painted in blood, and the 5 missing children from each murdered family also appear in the video. Meanwhile, Ashley draws a picture of how she dismembered her entire family. The other children are seen waiting in the hallway in the video, and staring creepily toward her. But when they notice Bagul behind her, they flee in terror. The evil entity then lifts Ashley and walks into the film with her. The next morning, we see the same box in the attic, now with a new roll of film label. Okay guys, thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.